office, this one's office. And,
Let Gina, before you start, let Gina bring that iPad up here.
okay.
Oh, we're good.
Does it need to be here, or
No.
will it catch it up there?
I'm just catching it. I'm
Okay.
zooming in.
Fantastic, okay. James.
We're good.
Okay, I'm ready.
You're ready.
Okay. And what we do is family research for any family comes in there, they call us or they, email us anything. We do it, people from California, Texas, everywhere. In fact, we had some people from Oklahoma this morning. I don't know how to leave, come to this meeting, And anytime y'all wanna know anything, let us know. We open Monday, not Monday, we close Monday and Friday, open Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 10 to 2. And, also, one of my big projects is finding old cemeteries. Last time they was updated was like 1979. So locations like it's on somebody's farm, or it's up on a hillside on a county road. So what we doing now is going to GPS. And we got 276 cemeteries in Wayne County. Probably 165 is old cemeteries that have been let go, have been done anything to since probably the 90s or 80s. In fact, 2 years ago, we cleaned one up in Waterfall, next to Collinwood, called Sin Cemetery. And it had been cleaned up in 40-some years. And it took us 3 days to do it. But we got Shane Fisher is helping us out with inmates cleaning cemeteries. So they probably got 34 cemeteries, old cemeteries cleaned. And we got probably about 100 old cemeteries located, but we ain't got to them. And eventually we're gonna do it. What we doing, we poison it, and eventually we're gonna clean the tomb blocks up with the D2 cleaner. And so that's what we're doing right now. And so we stay busy all the time, but we appreciate any help on locating any cemeteries in Wayne County. Clifton's got more cemeteries in any part of Wayne County. And I'm looking for about 12 now. I haven't looked for. And it's probably about 3 single grave around here on Beach Creek and in Eagle Creek. We got an idea where they at, but we're looking for the cemeteries with, 4 graves or 2 graves. So we definitely gonna get there. It just takes time. And I appreciate any help. And if y'all got any questions, just let us know. And this is Tim Anderson, and he's gonna tell you all about the history of Clifton. Ready, Tim?
Hi, folks. I'm Tim, and first off, I'd like to say thank you for having us. I'm really hard of hearing, okay? One reason that is the Marine Corps. Another reason is Civil War reenacting for a lot of years. Another reason is 40 years of building roads and bridges for you good fine taxpayers in Tennessee. So if you ask me a question, I probably won't hear it, but I'll try to get somebody to say, hey, somebody asked you a question, okay?
I'll take
Thank you, James Lee. But I don't wear those things in mirrors because they buzz and I can't take it. So anyway, we'll get through this. Y'all ready to take a little history walk? It's gonna be interesting, I promise you. There's everything I'm about to tell you is documented. Everything. Is it easy to find the documentation? Absolutely not. Do I have a copy of the documentation? I wouldn't say it if I didn't. That's a promise. Is it legal to have? Debatable. Okay? Here's the thing. Right of information. You're a taxpayer. Unless it's considered confidential, you have the right to know this. Why they're trying to hide this information, besides the point. We have a team. Most of them are still current Marine Corps. They're stationed around the world. We have a computer system. We are jumping firewalls as we speak to retrieve this historical information. We do not chase confidential information. We don't have the right to do that. But if it is non-confidential, yes, you have the right to know it. And that's what we're here for. All right, here we go. The earliest we can take us back to right now. Everybody in here, I promise, studied Ferdinand de Soto. Everybody in here studied him. He was Spanish. He's in the 1500s, okay? Let's back up 450 years from him. That's how far we can take it right now. These people, and yes, this can be documented, can it not?
Yeah.
These are the ancient Welsh. They came here almost 450 years before Ferdinand de Soto in the Tennessee Valley, in this bend in the Tennessee River that y'all call home, and all the way to the Muscle Shoals, to the mouth of the river. There was a Native American tribe at that time called the Mandan. A lot of people hadn't heard of those folks. And the Mandan, some of them were still around, that the Hurons out of the Great Lakes hadn't killed them all out before Ferdinand de Soto got here. And when Ferdinand de Soto's people encountered the Mandans, what was left of them, that the Hurons hadn't killed or captured, they spoke Welsh. And they didn't look like any of the rest of the Indians. And Ferdinand de Soto was like, wait a minute, who are you people? Well, they're Native Americans. And they were known as Mandans. All right, so the Mandan Indians that lived right here where we call home did encounter Ferdinand de Soto, or vice versa. Okay? Now, there wasn't a whole lot of them left when he got here. There wasn't. Most of them were dead, but there were some. At that particular time, when Ferdinand de Soto got here, the Indians that some of y'all would be accustomed hearing their name, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Shawnee, the Blackfoot, the Creek, Chickamaugans, some of these that you're more familiar with were protecting an ancient race of people that were Native Americans. And they were living on the islands of the Tennessee River. They wasn't allowed to come to the banks. They were on the islands. And all these other Indian nations were protecting them. Now when the river flooded, they'd get them off the river. These people were known as the beautiful ones. Their name were the Tali. They were super intelligent people, most likely taught by the Mandans. Most likely. Can't prove that yet. May never be able to. But these Tali is who De Soto encountered and named them as the beautiful people. And they flourished under his exploration. Moving way ahead, way ahead, when a Spanish governor that had his headquarters in New Orleans, named Myro, owned all of these water systems around here, he thought, and I guess he did. The Tali was he sent his brother from New Orleans up here with a Navy force and an Army force of Spaniards to keep a check on them. To keep a check on these Tali people. Anyway, the Huron Native American Indians, just to put everything in perspective, lived up in the edge of Canada, up on the Great Lakes. Every 3 years they came here, and they came to take humans. That's what they came to do. So if you ever saw the movie The Last of the Mohican, that kind of touches on that very subject. All right, now, that kind of sets the Indians out there for where we need to be right now. So the Mandan met the Welsh. Hernan DeSoto showed up, met the Mandan, they spoke Welsh. All right, the Welsh turns right around and says that they're here before, 450 years before Hernan DeSoto. Well, there's somebody here before them. That's who we're looking for. Who was here before the ancient Welsh that encountered the Mandan? Who are these people? Just know that we're not done with the research that's concerning right here where you call home. Now, we're building up to getting to where we're here, all right? So, Hernan DeSoto now, within the last 12 years, there's been a lot of documentation done. There's still a lot of conjecture on this document. The first hogs that ever came to Tennessee was brought by the Spanish, Hernan DeSoto. How close did they get to where we call home? Pretty darn close. Everybody in this room has been to Davy Crockett Park. The lake at Davy Crockett Park is where he kept his hogs when it wasn't a lake there. The Presbyterian Church off the square in Lawrenceburg is where his headquarters sat. Archaeologists have done a study there and found relics that date to them. There was a group of Native American Indians that were being kept in what we call Davy Crockett Park today, where his soldiers stayed. They could smell this pork being cooked, and they thought it's the best smell they ever smelled. But they never tasted anything like it. They'd never seen anything like it. And so 3 of the chief's grandsons stole 4 hogs. They butchered them and they cooked them. Before they got to consume the meat, Hernan DeSoto's people caught them and took them to where the present day log cabin sits right off the square in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, where Davy Crockett's log cabin stands. Hernan DeSoto himself removed their hands at the wrist, which was a punishment by the Spaniards for thieving. The friendship that the Spaniards had established, Hernan DeSoto had established with the Native Americans at the time came to an end. The grandfather attacked Hernan DeSoto's camp. Hernan DeSoto's men were severely beaten, and they had to run for their lives. In this evacuation of that section of Tennessee, Hernan DeSoto was struck by a poisonous arrow from the Indians. Now, catch up with what you were taught in school. He made it to the bank of the Mississippi River and was either buried in the bank of the Mississippi River near Memphis, upstream of Memphis, present day, or was put in a boat and cast into the Mississippi River and never be heard from again. Whichever the case may be. Okay? Where did they cross the Tennessee River when he was sick? Now, if we'll pause just for a moment, I want to interject something here. For some of y'all that can go back to the 70s and remember something with me. Out here at y'all's pavilion on the bank of the river, across to the West Tennessee side, there used to be a long, cylinder-shaped pile of dirt with trees growing on it. And everybody said it was either a fort or Indian Burial Mound. And people had dug in there, it looked like they had taken artillery practice. There was holes all in it. And if you dug in it, the tree roots was like that right there. You couldn't get your hand back in there without having chopped roots. Yes, I'm one of them. And me and two of my best friends used to ride motorcycles down here in 1973 and 4. And we would go over there and arrowhead hunt across the ferry. And we would dig in that. Well, back then, we could still drink out of the Tennessee River. Probably shouldn't have, but we did. Well, one Thursday morning, we was out for summer. Got down here early, and the sun came through the canopy just right of the timber. And it shined back in it. We'd been digging. We was thirsty. We down on the riverbank drinking water. Looked back in there, and the sun shined through that canopy of leaves. Gold! We saw gold. And the three of us dived over the top of each other, getting back in that hole we dug. And we came out with this round disc, about this big around. We went to Waynesboro as hard as we could go on the motorcycles. Went to a gentleman up there that we trusted, was a historian, older gentleman. Also run a tractor dealership, had a car dealer, Willis dealership, named Mr. Bluford Edwards, big farmer. We took it to Mr. Bluford, and Mr. Bluford said, boys, I don't know what you got going this afternoon, but you better get back to wherever you found this and find the rest of it and bring it to me. So we went down there, come back down here, and we dug and stayed down here all night with a lantern. Forearm piece, metal, a back plate, the helmet, just like you see on TV, and one shin splint. It's what we dug out of that one bank over there. Took it all to Mr. Bluford. Mr. Bluford sent it to UT Knoxville, to the archaeological department up there. Never heard a word ever from it. Now, I believe Mr. Bluford sent it. I do. I don't know what happened to it, but I believe he sent it. But Mr. Bluford always questioned, and the men that he showed it to, like Mr. Hogeye Ray, Mr. Morris Ray's daddy that owned the dollar store, and several others that I won't mention because their nicknames are not appropriate in this room, all believed that that could have been either Hernando Soto himself or one of his senior officers, buried right across from y'all's pavilion. The mound is gone now. When I came home from the service, those lots that got cleared over there, it got gone. I don't know by who, I don't care. But I know what came out of it. All right, I just wanted to interject that part as far as putting you in a historical perspective on this. Now let's back way up. Let's back way up. Hernando Soto came and went and died here. His men, some of them did make it back to New Orleans. With that all being said, that's fine and good. The Louisiana territory was owned by the Spanish. All right. If you remember pre-American Revolutionary history, think way back. There was a thing called the 7-Year War, right? That was between the King of England and the King of France. And they fought for 7 years. And it was over a Native American chief accidentally getting killed. Guess where? Right there, bend of the river. And they fought for 7 years over it. And France lost. That's why we speak English today, basically. Okay? Anyway, before France lost the 7-Year War, that was before the Revolutionary War. Please remember with me, there's a person named Donaldson after the American Revolutionary War that comes by water and winds up at Fort Nashboro on the Cumberland River. Okay? And there's a guy that came overland, and his name is Robertson. And he had a little fort built waiting on Donaldson to get there on Christmas Day. All right. They had to have a map to follow, right? They had to know where they were going, either overland or by water. They had to know. So the French had been at a place that some of y'all, maybe all of y'all, have read about, called the Great Salt Lick on the Cumberland River, which is really close to where Nashville sits today. Okay, really, really close. But the thing about it is, and it was a natural salt lick. All the animals went there, so it was an easy harvest, right? The thing about it is, it had a name. And nobody seems to want to know the name for some reason. I don't speak French, but close is, I'm going to try it again.
Okay.
Cheninleville or something like that. Okay? And there were French Jesuit priests there. And they were teaching the Native American children about Jesus Christ. And it had been there for quite a few years. And they were also teaching them to speak French. And what the King of France demanded a person to be a good subject under his crown, because they were French. They really wasn't, but they seemed to be. All right, so anyway. So we got a French town where Donaldson and Robertson says they were the first English to come to, where Nashville is today. They built Fort Nashboro. They're the first white people to encounter that place ever. Not true. The French had had a town there for probably about 30 years, maybe longer. And they had a school there. And they had a church there. And then the Hurons came out of the great white north and destroyed it and killed the French. A French hired sword, here we go again, was known as a canton de soeur. Something similar to that. Anyhow, mercenaries. And they were hired to protect the French Jesuit priest and the French Navy and the French Army that was there. Now, we're going to move forward again in time. There was at least 2 that got away of those hired French swords. One of them got a street named after him in present-day Nashville to this very, very day, because he helped Donaldson and Robertson establish Fort Nashboro. Demonbreun. Everybody's been on Demonbreun Street in Nashville. Well, guess where the other one wound up? The other French hired sword that got away from the Huron Indians. His name, go for it, Jane.
I'll let you do that.
No, do it.
No,
Tell him.
you do it.
Montague.
Oh.
Really? Yeah, the Montague family. There you go. Now let's bring it home. Okay? So, this is not as far removed as we actually think it is. It's right here. It's in your blood. It's in your DNA. Okay? It is. We're going to take it a whole lot deeper, though. We're setting everything up for you for something here in just a second. It's pretty big. Okay. The Spanish, it took them a lot longer to get run off. It took a big land purchase. The Louisiana Purchase. Okay? All right. Now, here we go. We're going to concentrate on the bend of this river now, solely. We talked about the French. We talked about the Spanish. talked about the Indians, talked about the English. Now we're gonna talk about these folks, y'all's folks. All right. The first settlement that we can document by the English. Remember now, we're going to be dealing with Welsh, Spanish, French, and English. Most all y'all have always thought you're English. But any of you that's kin to the Montagues, well, guess what? You're French. Because they're French. And the Montagues are here early, along with a lot of others we ain't documented yet. Here we go. Let's play around a minute. All right, so Old Union. Everybody in this building's heard of Old Union, right? Up on Beach Creek? Yeah. All right. Across the road from Old Union is a place, a community called Leatherwood. Okay. Now, English-speaking white people could not settle on the bank of this river at that time. They had to run up the creek. They had to run up Beach Creek. All right, now here's where it's going to get what y'all want to know, I think. Old Union was a fort, yes. Do we know where it's set? I'm going to surprise every one of you in here. Yep, we do now. If you're standing in front of the Old Union Church, and there's a little concrete low water bridge right there to the right, and you cross that little low water bridge and the road forks right there, right out in that field right there is where the fort's at. There you go. Now here, right now, we got to say this. We cannot go around like a certain community did down in Georgia a few years ago and put up signs, because people are going to start trespassing, leaving gates open, letting stock out of fields, and we don't want to be responsible for that. So don't do that. Please don't do that. It gets you in a lot of trouble real quick. So don't do that. You can put it on a wall right here and let them figure out where it's at, but don't go out there and put no signs up now. Seriously. I went to court over that. Trust me, don't do this. All right. Old Union. Now, let's have a little fun. What's cemetery over there called? Balgham Cemetery. Right? Everybody heard of Balgham? All right, now, here comes the fun. Over here, I'm jumping way ahead of myself. But over here at a place that y'all call Carable, there's a holler right there called the Balgham Holler. Is there not? You ever heard of Balgham Holler? Runs in the Tennessee River. Actually, that's where the first ferry boat crossed the Tennessee River, out of Balgham Holler. It's an industrial holler. Now, you need to go ahead and know this now. I'm an industrial historian. I'm sorry, with all due respect, I don't care who's skinned to who. I'm not a genealogist. I'm an industrialist. All right. Balgham Holler at Carable got named from the Balgham family that was at Old Union, that the cemetery is named after. Is that cemetery old enough to say that that's where the Old Union residents are buried? Absolutely not. That cemetery is missing just like your Carable cemetery is missing. Your Carable cemetery is not known. Now, everybody be studying on that one, please. And if you know where it is, please tell this man right here, please. I beg you. Because we need it. He needs it. This county needs it. All right. Anyway, Balgham probably was one of the key players inside Old Union. Old Union is a name that was given to it about the time of the Civil War. What was it originally called? What was the name of that town? Was Bogum one of those Frenchmen that got away from the Huron Indians at the Salt Lick? Maybe. We don't know that yet. That's speculation. I won't go there. But Bogum Cemetery, Bogum Holler is all the same thing. Now, we're going to go in and jump way ahead of where I wanted to be right now, but we're going to do this. Bogum, you've heard of Carroll. Everybody in here has. And we're going to get to that in a minute. What was it before Carroll? It had a name. Reeves Ferry. What was it before that? Huh? Yeah, it had a name. Bougainville. He's the first English-speaking white man that had a ferry across the Tennessee River. Hey, how about that? Where'd he go? Well, he sold it to Reeves, and he went back to Virginia and Maryland and started the first railroad. Documented. Sure enough. Not by himself. He was with a group of men that started the first northeastern Virginia, southern Pennsylvania, something railroad. But he's the guy that had the ferry down here. Now, I got everybody's attention, so I'm going to drive the home run home for you. What was it before Bougainville? I want to ask to do something for me. It sounds foolish, I know. How many people here can say that they know a towboat pilot or captain? Show hands, come on. Yeah, vast majority in this room. So, most all of those towboat folks can tell you, a lot more than I can, if you're going downstream and go past the pavilion, you got to be real careful right down there in that curve because that current can swap ends of your towboat. Y'all ever heard that? Have you ever heard towboat people say that? That current can turn your whole towboat around in the middle of the Tennessee River right out here. And it's very dangerous. How does that tie into anything? Here we go. Because there was an ancient map one time showed up, similar to this. This one's dated 1830, whatever, 6, yeah, 1836, and this is y'all's copy. The ancient French, we're back to them for a minute. When they were here, we can't say if it was the French that did it or the ancient Welsh that did it, but we know it wasn't the Spanish. And everybody believes it was the French that did it because their territory mostly ran up the Mississippi River, up into the Ohio Valley, up into the Great Lakes, up into Canada. And they came down the Mississippi, up the Ohio, into the Tennessee, as far as you could travel to a deep water port. The last deep water port from the mouth of the Tennessee River up until 1818. That's when it didn't exist anymore. And they named it after a Greek god. And it was named the Port of Aeneas. And if you can Google and research enough on your computers, you will find the Port of Aeneas in the Tennessee River. It's right there where the towboats get turned around, folks. Right here in the bend of the river. The French came, ancient French came and parked their sailing ships right there, got off their boats and went overland to their capital, what we call Charleston, South Carolina, named after their King Charles. Where you live is one of the most important historical sites east of the Mississippi River. And yes, all this can be documented. So back to Carroll for a moment, if we may. Governor Carroll is the longest sitting Tennessee state governor that ever held the office. He was a war hero of the War of 1812. Served under Andy Jackson. He was a general. Came back from the war, Andy Jackson running for governor, and they wanted this to be the new Tennessee state capital. Carroll, not Clifton, Carroll. Now here we go. Now I'm going to be very careful how I proceed right here. The two biggest lies that are being told in this county, in this state, in this town especially. Is Clifton like 2 votes being Tennessee state capital? That's not true, folks. Nothing true about it. Please kill the rumor. It like 2 votes, Carroll like 2 votes coming off the long list, going on to the short list to be voted from for the state capital. It never got from the long list to the short list. It's not Tim making this up, it's history. It's the fact. Another fact, Erwin Rommel, yeah, he signed the hotel register. He had his name on the door. We didn't. He never came to the United States. Never. But I've seen it. Yeah, look at it again. It says Edward, not Erwin. Sorry. Edward was also a colonel in the German army, but he wasn't a Desert Fox. Desert Fox never came to the United States of America, folks. You've got more history here than you can write in a book. You don't need those lies. You don't. Sounds good, but it's not true. Not true at all. Carroll was a Republican town. It was a pro-Abraham Lincoln town. When the Yankee gunboats came by the first time, they didn't shell Carroll because Carroll was a pro-Abraham Lincoln town. Clifton, on the other hand, was not. They shelled it. There was a lot of destruction done here because of that. Yes, the people of Clifton did raid Carroll. They did. The reason why. First vote for secession, for Tennessee to come out of the Union and become a southern state, it was voted no. It's in your history book. The state of Tennessee voted no. They would not succeed. Then Abraham Lincoln said, then you give me 50,000 troops. 2 weeks later, there was another vote. We did succeed. Sometime in that period of time, there was a lot of animosity, a lot of attitude between the two towns. There was a lot of destruction, a lot of death. It really was sad, but it happened. But now let me tell you something that you can take a whole lot of pride in, and you need to put your signs up. You need to have it on the wall, because nothing will ever change this. And it's a good thing, a really good thing. Those people all over the United States and different countries are looking for it. And some are finding it. A lot more need to find it on y'all's website. There is one place in the United States of America, only one, for an inner river, navigational river within the lower 48 states that had the largest embarkation. Troops coming off the United States, troops coming off the land and getting on ships. And then a different time altogether, de-embarkation, where troops were getting off the boats and coming on the land. That one town in the United States holds both of those titles. during the American Civil War. And it's Clifton. The de-embarkation was for the 100-Day War, for the Battle of Atlanta. Moving on with the wind. 327,000 troops got off the river at Clifton. 327,000. Just the artillery part of that army had 1,400 ambulances. That's a lot to wrap your mind around. When they were going through Nashville, they were still getting off the boats at Clifton, one right after another. That's the ones getting off the river to go fight the Battle of Atlanta. The ones getting on the river was after Nashville fell in 1865. January, cold wintertime. They were 294,000. They were getting on the boat at Clifton when they hadn't even left camp in Nashville. 294,000. And they left here and went to Virginia and beat Lee. It's all documented. That's what you need to wrap around and take pride in, and people will flock to here going, wow, I want to see where that place is. Clifton, chartered 1850. When Carroll was smoking and blowing, there was a community, a town that existed where your town exists. The creek that comes out by the penitentiaries and makes the boat dock is known as Roach Creek. It's on your maps, Roach Creek. The community that exists where you call Clifton was called Roach Bluff. Mr. Roach has got a broken headstone in his city cemetery. Only one. I'm sure his family's buried there somewhere beside him. Don't you think, John Clay?
Yeah, most I moved back to, I think it's Kenton County, Tennessee, and some of them went to Kentucky and Ohio. Most people back then, they would go back into Ohio or Indiana or Kentucky out of the river. I always thought they traveled the land, they did. That's what surprised me about Wayne County.
Thank you. So, Mr. Roach kind of sold out and let Clifton become Clifton. Now, let's get down to something that, let's talk about Clifton for a minute. Okay. There's two basic men that made Clifton show up on the map. They're from Murray County. One of them's name is Pillow, Gideon Pillow. He became a Confederate general. Wasn't worth throwing dirty socks at. The other one was named Polk. President Polk's grandson. All right, so when they finally got here, when they finally got to the terminus on the river, they said, what are we going to do? What we're going to build a monument and say, we built this road all the way from Columbia, actually Franklin. What are we going to do to say this is our road, we did this? What are we going to do? Well, they sat and studied about it and thought about it, and they come up with a plan. So the two main streets in this town would be the center of town. Polk Street and Pillow Street, where they cross today, is the original center of this town called Clifton. Remember we talked about current 1863? There's a term, current 1863, referring to Clifton. It's It's when it was burnt to the ground in the winter of, with snow on the ground. Polk and Pillow Street is the center of town, 1 block behind us. Polk Street, if you go down there in that intersection and drive it or walk it up to Water Street, you're looking directly across from the ferry landing. Look at your old pictures. Pillow Street goes from Roach Creek to Ross Creek. Still today. Right here where they rebuilt Clifton, okay? Right here where we sat in the business district of Clifton, with all due respect, is where the college sat. Now, here we go. Clifton had a tremendous hospital. Which no one has ever been sure exactly where it's at. Do me a giant favor. Drive to your cemetery here in town, up on the hill at the water tank. And as soon as you go in that cemetery, stop your vehicle and get out with a piece of paper and a pencil, please. And walk down through the main road there and write down all the doctors that you see.
I believe there's 16 doctors, everybody in there. That's
There
amazing.
is no way this little town would have that many doctors. No way. There's your hospital. All right, I ran off and left something that I'd give anything I would have brought. Moving way ahead, way ahead, way after the Civil War, this part of Clifton's been built. The old part of Clifton's been forgotten about. The thing that was killing everybody in this town, why there's so many dead children, and this whole community around here, was because of a dadgum bug, a mosquito, malaria. Yeah. That's the part of the documentation that ain't no fun. But then I'm gonna make you cheer for your hometown in just a minute. Because all these doctors were here trying to save these children. And there's a lady buried up there that everybody in this room should go up there and read and applaud her for what it says on her epitaph. How she tried to help these children of this town. They didn't have any parents. She was a doctor's wife. It's a beautiful inscription on her headstone. Beautiful. And there's this man that come along. He wasn't a doctor, he wasn't a pharmacist. But he said, we got to do something about this. And the doctors are saying, we're trying. In 1928, after the fact, the riddle had been solved. But in 1928, my father and 2 of his brothers came to this town and put in a pharmacy. They were doctors of pharmacy. And they put a pharmacy in this town to make sure that that drug never went away. Because one man, he's buried in Paris, Tennessee, in the city cemetery in Paris, Tennessee. But he lived right here in this town. Come up with the formula to inject in you to kill malaria. And nobody believed him. Nobody. So the French army bought it from him prior to World War I. And the French army was the only army to have a healthy army to go into the battle with Germany during World War I because they had bought his drug. The Clifton Bottling Company made the bottles. You can buy them off the internet today. And the stamp that they stamped the name of his product in the glass is what I forgot to bring down here today. I own it. I metal detected it right here in this town. Actually right behind this building. That's the things you can take a lot of pride in. A lot of pride. Lots of people live thanks to folks that nobody knows nothing about. You got a wonderful history, folks. The iron furnaces, okay? Oh, let's do this. I'm slipping. Let's do this. The big furnace out here at the Hassel-Dowdy lot. All right, sitting out there on the Hassel-Dowdy lot. Everybody says that's an iron furnace. God was good to you too. Let me say that. Cherry limestone. If you go off the bank of the river on this side of the river, you'll see natural limestone deposits that is pink colored. It's called cherry limestone. It's a nickname for it. And it runs basically from Hardins Creek to White Oak Creek. And that's the only place anywhere it grows. And that's where God put it. It's up here in Harry Floyd's rock crusher too. Okay? Now, what's that got to do with anything? That red limestone was put in that furnace right out there to cook down, and it makes perfect Portland cement for banking concrete. I came down here in the state truck and harvested a pickup load of that mess, and we carried it to the state lab, headquarter lab in downtown Nashville, and cooked it down, and sure enough, it's perfect Portland cement. That furnace out there at the Hassel-Dowdy lot was for cooking cement. Surprise. You had iron furnaces. Baker. The Baker furnace is still there. It's just collapsed. It sits 1 mile away from the edge of the river. The Yankee gunboats, the Lexington, the Tyler, and the Conestoga, in February 1862, after Fort Heitman and Fort Henry had failed, before Fort Donelson failed, made a water expedition from those forts to Florence, Alabama, and back, and destroyed every Confederate town, every Confederate boat, or captured them, or sunk them. And they destroyed every iron furnace they could find. The river was everywhere. Read about the gunboat, Yankee gunboats fighting at Fort Henry. The Confederates couldn't fight there because the water was up higher than the walls of the fort. Well, that's the same thing with Clifton. The water was up big here too. So they pulled those gunboats right up to that furnace and leveled it. That's what happened to the Baker furnace. Cool thing about the Baker furnace is the biggest furnace in Clifton. But the cool thing about it, when Andy Jackson was going to the war and battle in New Orleans in 1815, he camped over here on the Natchez Trace just outside of Collinwood. Collinwood wasn't there then. And came overland and bought cannonballs from the Baker furnace in Clifton, Tennessee, which wasn't Clifton at the time either, and went on down to fight the battle of New Orleans. Pretty cool. Now, what I was telling Tommy, and this is something that I really want y'all to do. There are two huge mines, huge. One of them's called the Marion Mine, which is the biggest, and one of them's called the Walker Mine, where they harvested iron ore and put it in the furnace and cooked it into pig iron. Nobody can find the Marion Mine and nobody can find the Walker Mine. Can't find them. Everybody in this room, I believe, with all due respect, knows where Lizard Glade Cemetery is, okay? The Black Cemetery. Go up on top of Lizard Glade when you get time. Go up there. Get out. Walk back so you can see the highway. Look back toward the college. To your right will be the penitentiary. To your left will be your new dollar store. And over the hill behind Country Girls is this wonderful town of Clifton. And look at the bowl that the highway runs right through the middle of. That's your Marion mine. People look everywhere for it. The highway's running right through the middle of it. You have so much to be able to put on the internet and show people from around the world. Just like the Marion Mine, take a picture of it. Put it on the internet and say, here's the Marion Mine, come to it. Where's the Marion Furnace? Oh, anybody know? Behind CCA up Roach Creek. And you still go up there and find relics all day long in the creek. Can't you, James Lee?
Yeah, we found some about 3 months ago.
The furnace itself, the rocks, they're gone. Now there again, where did they go? Who took them monster stones? Where did they go? Who knows? They're not there anymore. But you can find the relics in the creek. It's private property, be careful. Just like the bridge that goes over Ross Creek right out here. Across from the Cross-Eyed Creek, is that right? Thank you. Thought it was Cross-Eyed Creek. All right, if you go down where everybody used to go down and fish, probably still do, that dead end road, go down there and on the right-hand side going down, there's this humped up place. Go down there when the water's really clear and look off in there and you'll see the bridge. The rocks stacked up. They took them off at the water line on the abutment side and over there on the other side. They're under the water. Where'd those rocks go? Who knows? Were the sidewalks built out of them here in Clifton? Yeah, some people say they were. Where'd all the rocks go that come out of all the big houses in Carroll? Where'd those rocks go? All those quarried stones. Part of them up there in the Cemetery Hill. The history, and we're not even touching the edge of all this. The history that y'all have here in this town, here in this community, is much more than the lies that have been passed down to cover the truth for whatever reason. We don't need them. The vote thing for the state capitol, the Desert Fox thing, we don't need them. We've got facts that are worth a whole lot more than that made up stuff ever dreamed about. Who made it up? Who started that mess? It doesn't matter, does it? I don't think it does. Because y'all have got some of the richest history in Tennessee, and guarantee the richest history on the Tennessee River. At least below the Muscle Shoals. May not be true above the Muscle Shoals, but it's definitely true below the Muscle Shoals. And it's a wonderful thing, and it's time for y'all's generation to say, hey, we're going to grab a hold of this thing, and we're going to show the world that we know it. It's everything I've told you in this room today is documented. Everything. There is no lies being told. Nothing. Ever how y'all want to advance, address this, and move forward, that's up to y'all. It's your town. But there's people really hungry for it. Really are. Know this. Now, I'm gonna give you a Civil War story, okay, that is documented. We all know Forrest crossed the river 2 times here, right? That's not true. 4. 1 time over, 1 time back. 1 time over, 1 time back. That's 4, y'all, okay? And one of them times, the Yankees was right on his heels, and they set up their cannons right over in West Tennessee, on the bank of the river. Well, get this. They shot with everything they had, but they was hitting the bank. They couldn't get them up here on the hill. And Forrest was shooting back, and he couldn't get them to land where the Yankees were, so they were shooting behind them back there in the swamps. And the only thing got killed was 1 Yankee mule. Poor old mule. Mule broke and run right into a cannonball. That's what they say. Anyway, so now to the seriousness of it. Clifton has a piece of history that no other town has, except Chattanooga. Except Chattanooga. Clifton has a siege. Huh? Yeah. Unheard of. What? To read it, it will absolutely fascinate you for one thing and then blow your mind at the same time. There was a gentleman from Wayne County, had been a prior sheriff. And if you come to James Lee's office, you can see a picture of him because it's hanging on the wall. Big Jake Biffle. Yeah. A great big man. After the Civil War, he went to Texas. He couldn't live in Tennessee no more. They didn't like him. Big Jake Biffle was a fine Christian man, a good man. And so Big Jake said, I've had enough. Y'all had a stockade down here, Stockade Hill. And so Big Jake decided he was gonna come down here and make that go away. He gonna throw it in the river. And almost did. So he come down here with everything he had and he circled Clifton. Put a siege on. Wasn't nobody leaving, wasn't nobody coming. Unless they had to go through him. And he demanded the stockade surrender. Well, the folks that was living in the stockade was known as the 2nd Tennessee Mounted Infantry. And the 2 men that are buried, the Yankees that are buried in the Clifton Cemetery on top of the hill, they were both in the 2nd Tennessee Mounted Infantry, and believe it or not, they were killed in the siege of Clifton. Sure were. So anyway, Big Jake circles the town of Clifton, and he's waiting on General Forrest to get there, and he keeps sending messengers every day. Some days he sends 2. And Forrest is down there in Mississippi. He's like, get here, we got him. And so during all this craziness, and it does get crazy, all of a sudden, one of the Yankee tin clads, not ironclads, listen, you got wood clads. The first gunboats that come through here and shell Clifton were wood clads. They were made out of solid wood. And known as the Lexington, Tyler, and the Conestoga. Slow moving, great big thing, looked like power withers. Next thing was a cotton clad. They took wood clads and they stacked bales of cotton. Then they came out with tin clads. Then they came out with ironclads, rams, several different things. Anyway, the USS 54 and the US 55 was the Elfin and the Undine. The Undine was the USS 55. She pulled up on the bank and fell right into the middle of the siege of Clifton and panicked. And she's loaded heavy, got cannons on it, a bunch of stuff, horses, cavalry, and went to back up and she ripped a 9-foot gash in her hull and sunk right there on the bank of the river. Caused all kinds of trouble. So the commander of Stockade Hill panicked. He decided the best thing to do was go to Nashville and get reinforcements. Had a telegraph, type on the telegraph. He took 2 companies, headed out, got out of here, got to Centerville. Part of Big Jake Biffle's bunch took off after him. When they got to Centerville, That's how the Battle of Centerville happened. And the courthouse of Centerville got burnt because of the siege of Clifton. Oh, it gets better. Oh, it gets better. So the commander of the Undine unloads all of his cannons to help the 2nd Tennessee Mounted Infantry fight against Big Jake Biffle's Confederates. That's where the legend of the cannon lost in Ross Creek comes from. It ain't true. Don't go there. It ain't no such thing. They lost a cannon on the bridge, but they got it back. The Yankees did. It ain't out there. Anyhow. So instead of the 2nd Tennessee Mounted Infantry, after the courthouse of Hickman County getting burnt, go on to Nashville, they came back to Clifton. Huh? Anyway, no reinforcements coming. So they get back to Clifton. At the same time, the Undine's commander gets in a rowboat with 2 Navy boys and goes to rowing downstream and runs into a bunch of Navy vessels. Well, here they all come. Big Jake Biffle realizes there's no way I can hold Clifton now, because here comes the whole U.S. Navy. And they brought a little boat along called the Little Champion. A little tugboat called the Little Champion. Had divers on it. And back up. And they dove in the river in 1863 and plugged the side of the boat. And then took steam power and pumped the water out of the Undine and raised it. Right here at Clifton, there's you another history. So Big Jake Biffle ran. So when you hear this rumor that the old ski slope was the ending shots of the Battle of Clifton, the old ski slope is where Big Jake Biffle's headquarters was. And he had to run from the Yankee Navy. So he took off and went to Indian Creek over in Wayne County. And that's where he run into Forrest. And Forrest was like, we're coming to Clifton. Why ain't you at Clifton? Yada, yada, yada. So Forrest got mad. And they almost had a duel between the 2 of them. But they didn't. They crossed the river. Not at Clifton this time. In Perry County. Trying to catch them gunboats. They go to a place across from New Johnsonville, Old Johnsonville. State park over there now called Pilot Knob. It's a state park. And Old Johnsonville's a state park. And Forrest set up on top of the hill, and some of his men captured the Undine, that gunboat that sunk here at Clifton, and they couldn't drive it, so they wrecked it. But they tried, and they shelled Johnsonville. None of this would have happened if it hadn't have been for Clifton. That's how powerful your history is. Thanks. I hope I've given you a little something to think about.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe you can come back
Yeah.
and tell us about the Civil War, because you were just getting started on that, weren't you?
Yeah.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed